Welcome back, everybody, to my golden age of fighting games. No, not golden age. It's golden year. Golden age would have been a better name, wouldn't it? Fuck me. All right. So this might be a surprise to some of you who've been with me for quite some time, but I got a pretty shitty mic. The kind of mic that picks up every single noise it possibly can, regardless of how quiet that noise might be. And I made the unforgivable mistake of recording this entire video with the ceiling fan on. It's the type of ceiling fan you would think is quiet and is perfectly fine to have on while you're recording a video, but no. Every single time I record a video, I have to turn off the ceiling fan and sit in a hot ass room as to not pick up the slightest change in air movement. I forgot to do that this time, so the audio of this entire video is fucked. So I suppose this is my preemptive apology. I did my best to fix it, but you're gonna hear a background ceiling fan every once in a while in this video. So them's the breaks. If you're watching this video and you have no fucking idea what this whole thing is about or what this series is about, that's because you probably haven't seen the first one in the series. Not telling you what to do, but you might want to do that. At the beginning of that video, I explained what this entire series is all about, the rules and everything. And to not annoy the people who are actually interested in watching the entire series from start to finish, I'm not going to keep reiterating that information. So while I'm not going to say that you have to watch every single video in this series, you should at least see the beginning of that one, just so you know, what the fuck's going on. Time to talk about some Mortal Kombat. Luckily, I've already touched on the two most important Mortal Kombat heroes, so I don't actually have to go over them. I went over Liu Kang in the first part of this video series, and I went over Johnny Cage in his own character analysis. So, if you want to hear my thoughts on them, go check out those videos. But, just to summarize, Liu Kang sucks, Johnny Cage is awesome, but is vastly underutilized. Okay, let's continue on. I feel like the Mortal Kombat segments of these videos are going to be considerably longer than any of the other ones. They just have so many characters that have so many scenes. Now, don't get me wrong, Street Fighter and Tekken also have a lot of characters, but where their stories are written where certain characters are in the forefront and some are in the background and really don't have that much story to go over, I could essentially ignore a good 80% of the roster. But because of the ways Mortal Kombat writes its story, which is essentially character chapters, where every 4 levels you basically change characters, a large percentage of the roster actually has a decent amount of story. So sadly, I can't just ignore them. Now you'd think that would automatically put Mortal Kombat above the other 2 series in this category, but oddly enough, that's not the case. While it's true that a lot of heroes in Mortal Kombat have more screen time than Street Fighter and Tekken heroes combined in most cases, a lot of that time is spent not fleshing them out, and they've been retconned so many fucking times that they don't even really have an established character. And when I say retconned, I'm not just talking about the 2 reboots they had. I'm saying that they have several major and minor reboots that happen within a single era, like in between all the timeline shenanigans. The heroes that reside in Outworld get this the worst, hands down. So let me give you an example. Mortal Kombat 9 shows pretty clearly that the heroes of Outworld are not heroic in the modern sense of the word. Kitana is introduced in the series as an assassin trying to kill Liu Kang outside of the tournament. She's not shown as what you would consider a traditionally heroic character, although she is a good guy as far as Outworld is concerned. But her, as well as the other quote-unquote good guys of Outworld, do their good things through pretty fucked up means. And the story shows very clearly that Liu Kang is the first person Kitana has ever met that has this sort of traditionally heroic mindset. She's absolutely baffled at the idea that he would allow her to live after she tried to kill him. Liu Kang's kindness and inherent goodness is shown as something that doesn't really exist in Outworld. He's the one who introduces that concept to Kitana's character in the first place. And her being influenced by Liu Kang's goodness makes up a large portion of her character arc throughout these games. Problem is that they don't really focus on changing her all that much. Now don't get me wrong, they do a little bit of work towards that change, but really what they do is that they change their entire writing philosophy between every game, and then each of those characters are just vastly different in each following game. For instance, Jade doesn't have this character arc. When Jade is introduced in Mortal Kombat 9, there's really nothing about her that makes her a good person. At least not as far as the standards of Earth heroes are concerned. The only reason why she even fights on the hero's side is because she's friends with Kitana and Kitana sides with them. But she's never really shown to care all that much about the conflict itself. But when Mortal Kombat 11 comes out, she's completely different. She's just straight up a selfless good person who tries to help everyone around her and fights for the oppressed and downtrodden. And this change in her character is not treated as if it was character development. When she meets up with Kotal Khan in 11, he talks about the way she's acting in this game as if that's the way she always behaved. And when he starts behaving like most Outworld characters acted like back in 9 and starts brutalizing the Tarkatans, she calls him out for having changed and now being a darker, more oppressive person. person than he was before. The problem is, by introducing this concept to Jade's character and pretending like it's something that has always been there, it completely undermines Katana's character arc. The whole idea is that this didn't exist in Outworld before she met Liu Kang. She had never seen this level of kindness before, and this is what influences her throughout the series. By rewriting characters like Jade and Kotal and all these other people to be kind, caring fighters of oppression, you have now made Katana's arc in 9 not make any goddamn sense. You're telling me she was so inspired by the goodness of Liu Kang on their first meeting when her best friend was basically just as good as he was? No, it doesn't make any sense. All of Outworld was a very warlike race of people, a place where the murder and assassination of innocent people, just like Katana tried to do to Liu Kang, is considered a completely reasonable response, as long as you can use it to get something that you're after. But NetherRealm decided to change their entire writing philosophy and themes of Mortal Kombat halfway through the story. So instead of Katana trying to kill Shao Kahn to get revenge for her father, now all of a sudden it's because he's oppressing people. Jade is no longer her friend who wants to assist her and help her get her revenge. She's also trying to help the oppression of the people under Shao Kahn. The Tarkatans are no longer a warrior race whose sole purpose is to dominate other races, and Baraka is not a dogmatically loyal soldier under Shao Kahn. No, throw that shit out the window. Now they are also oppressed, and they've been misunderstood the whole time. None of this is character development or natural evolution of a story. It is just a bunch of fucking retcons. This is the definition of trying to take a square block and fit it into a circular hole. NetherRealm wanted to make a story about oppression because, I don't know, I guess it's in right now, but Mortal Kombat has never been about that. It's not something they ever cared about till the last couple of years. And instead of naturally introducing storylines about oppression into the story, they just retconned half their fucking roster to now have their stories be about oppression, despite the fact that it never was before. So between the multiple major timeline retcons that happened, as well as all of these other smaller retcons, because they just decided to change the theme of the story halfway through, that leaves you with a game series where every other game, all of the characters' characterization completely change on you without explanation. And because of this, like 85-90% of the characters on your roster do not have a consistent characterization and are therefore shitty characters. Essentially, they're inconsistent as fuck. But luckily, that does not include all of their heroes. There are a few that are untouched by this issue. One being Scorpion. Luckily for his character, they were already working on a redemption storyline before they decided to shift everyone's character in a completely new direction. That means that even if there is a massive shift in his character between games, it's way less noticeable because they were already working on a storyline where he's supposed to be changing. Despite him being a character whose morality is more aligned with those heroes of Outworld, he doesn't feel like he has a massive retcon like they do. And it makes his character really be the only one to survive it unscathed. His character arc is actually really good. Scorpion goes from a character who is generally pretty apathetic towards morality as a whole, with a single-minded obsession to acquire the vengeance that he seeks, to eventually evolving into a genuinely good and selfless hero, and has what I would say is one of the best character arcs in the entire series. I still put Johnny Cage above Scorpion in terms of how well their character's done, but he's up there. Definitely top 3. Another character that definitely deserves to be up there is Sonya Blade. Now, to be fair, Sonya Blade does not have a lot going on. Her character is almost entirely tied to Johnny Cage's character. He kind of elevates her as a character. But as I've said before in past videos, specifically my Castlevania video, I'm okay with a character just being a support character. In fact, it's a necessity. She is written in a way that allows her to remain a support character and doesn't feel bad about her being a support for Johnny Cage. She's got a little bit of flavor of her own story, specifically the stuff with Jax and Kano. It's just enough to make her character seem like she doesn't exist for the sole purpose of supporting Johnny Cage, while not being so much that it completely overtakes the story and removes that support from Johnny Cage's character. Again, check out my Castlevania video if this is something you're interested in, because I talk in depth in that video about just how important support character roles are and how it's important that they remain support characters. She's certainly a simplistic character, but you don't have to be a complex character to be a good one. You just have to serve your role in the story well. And as far as Mortal Kombat is concerned, Sonya does it better than most. And she would also go near the top of the list as a genuinely well-written hero. Jax doesn't. Jax fucking sucks. I'll be perfectly honest with you. If you ask NetherRealm what was up with Jax's character, like who is he as a person, I don't think they'd be able to tell you. Every single game, he has a whole new story going on, and none of it feels like a natural progression of where his character would go. It just seems fucking random most of the time. In Mortal Kombat 9, he was a military man. He was there as a hero to stop the bad guy. He was a support character to the main story and a support character to Sonya Blade. Mortal Kombat 10, he was turned evil and under mind control, so he didn't even really have a character. In Mortal Kombat 11, he's on a farm and he's all sad, and they try to make it so like his main thing is about his daughter and how much he loves her. But then in his arcade ending, when he wins and he has the chance to completely rewrite the entire timeline and make it whatever he wants to make it, he like brings back segregation and makes the world better for all black people? What does that have to do with his character? When has he ever said anything at any point in time in this whole story about black oppression? Did you give him this storyline because he's the black guy? I mean, okay, I guess. In the entire franchise, you never once set that up to be a part of his character. His whole character was based around loyalty to the military, then eventually PTSD, and him being afraid for his daughter that she would suffer the same fate that he did. That's where his whole storyline was, a military man and a family man. Where the fuck does black oppression come in at? Did you just expect us to buy into that because he's black? Some trash ass shitty writing, I'll be honest with you. Jax is a fucking terrible character. Cyrax is fine. Cyrax is the one person in his ninja clan that doesn't want to be a robot, and they're turning everyone in his ninja clan into a robot, and then he eventually gets turned into a robot, and then he eventually gets his mind back, but he's still a robot, and then he really doesn't like being a robot. And that's pretty much his entire story. There's really not that much to say about him. I mean, he has a whole storyline entirely devoted to him and tons of scenes devoted to his characterization. But the only characterization that they actually give him is how much he doesn't want to be a robot. Does that sound fucking stupid? Because it sounds really fucking stupid to me. And then there's like a long list of heroes that barely get anything, you know, do almost nothing and just leave. And that probably can describe like 15 or 20 other heroic characters. Yeah. The series really suffers from having way too many characters that can't fully be focused on, which would normally be fine because it's a fighting game and you're supposed to have like a ton of characters. Mortal Kombat has a massive time management issue when it comes to writing their characters. The way their story modes are structured means they have a ton of different characters that have equal screen time and equal amount of story, but none of that screen time is really used to flesh out the character. It's just used to add more plot to an already convoluted story. So you end up playing with what, 12, 13, 14 characters throughout the course of the story, and by the end, you don't really know any of them. Some characters over the course of many games get fleshed out really well because good character moments are sprinkled in with those characters, but the vast majority of them are just there, do things to push the plot along, and fuck off. So what you're left with is over, what, 70 characters that have tons and tons of story, but almost no characterization or depth to speak of. And there's really only a few that get around this. So at the end of this segment, who do we got? We got Johnny Cage, Scorpion, Sonya Blade. Anybody else who's just fucking amazing? It was just the greatest ever. Raiden's boring. Raiden's character is the mentor who wants to help humanity, and he never shifts away from that throughout the entire series. We never even find out why it is he feels that way. Turns evil for a bit, but that's mind control, so it's not even genuine character development. Kung Lao's entire characterization is being jealous of Liu Kang, and that's about it. Again, no real story or arc of his own. Then you have a bunch of characters in this sort of who gives a shit category like Kenshi or Cassie Cage. They're not bad. You like their personality, appearance, overall vibe, but as far as characterization and storylines go, there just isn't all that much done with them. That might be it. I think that's all of them. If I forgot somebody, it's probably because they're forgettable, which is sort of a problem in of itself, ain't it? So, yeah. Johnny Cage, Scorpion, and Sonya Blade. Those are the three good heroes of the series, with Katana being okay. The rest needs some serious work. Now on to Street Fighter. Street Fighter's story is a baffling clusterfuck of senselessness and chaos, with continuity errors and fucked up timeline shit galore. It is confusing as fuck, and despite this, they've been able to write some pretty damn decent heroic characters. Now don't get me wrong, a lot of their characters do have issues. They have a lot of characters in Street Fighter that are just straight up boring. They do not have interesting stories, characterizations, character arcs. However, the vast majority of their legacy characters are really well done. Conceptually speaking, characters like Ryu, Guile, Ken, Chun-Li are really well put together characters. There's a character evolution there that makes sense, is interesting, and well done. Like, I wouldn't put Ryu, Ken, or Chun-Li's character up with Johnny Cage in terms of how well their character is done. They're still considerably better than, what, 85% of the Mortal Kombat roster? And Guile probably is up there with Johnny Cage. Yeah, I know, shocking. For the most part, if you point at a Street Fighter character who was introduced in Street Fighter 1 or 2, chances are that if you look at them now, today, like in Street Fighter 6, they're interesting characters now. Because despite each Street Fighter game not having all that much story individually, over the course of the entire franchise, they have moved forward the story of each character incrementally. And there's a natural evolution that happens there over the course of that time. While something like Mortal Kombat has way more story being told, I would say that Street Fighter is significantly better when it comes to the time management of their story. They can have characters evolve and change far more and far more believably, despite having way less time to do so. Now, there is a bit of a dark spot when it comes to Street Fighter's hero characters and how they're used. For one, Capcom just cannot wait to replace all their heroic characters with new, less interesting characters. They've already announced that Luke is supposed to be the next Ryu, and they're going to retire the character and replace him with Luke for the younger generation. Luke is not an interesting character in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing to him. He has far less going on than Ryu does. And this is the second time they've tried this. They tried it once with Alex, didn't work. Now they're trying it again with Luke, and surprise, surprise, it ain't fucking working. I really don't understand why they're trying to force this. No one has any problems with Ryu, Akuma, or any of these other characters. Everybody likes them. So where exactly is Capcom's head in all this where they're constantly trying to replace them with another character? And it's not just Ryu they're doing this with. Street Fighter 5 and 6 came out with a bunch of new generation characters that are supposed to be replacements for old characters. It's just so odd to me. They can't possibly think that all their fans are going to gravitate to all these brand new characters and just completely forget about all the legacy characters. That's not how this shit works. Now on to Tekken, who funny enough has the exact opposite problem that Mortal Kombat has. You see, Mortal Kombat's whole issue is that its story tries to be an ensemble piece. It wants like 20 characters to all have equal importance throughout the story. The problem is that doesn't give the characters enough time to be properly fleshed out. So every game you have 20 or so characters that have a decent amount of story but no actual characterization or development. Their issue is focus and trying to divide that focus up between all of these characters. Tekken's issue isn't a lack of focus, it's actually hyper focus on just a couple of characters, specifically the Mishimas. Heihachi, Kazi, and Jin don't get the majority of the focus, they get all of it. And if you are not one of those three characters, you don't get fucking anything. And this puts Tekken at a massive disadvantage because the Mishimas aren't heroes. The only one that qualifies would be Jin. So while Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter both have focus on a variety of different heroic characters, Tekken doesn't. It's literally just one guy. And if you've been on my channel for any amount of time, you know exactly how I feel about Jin. I've made like 3 or 4 videos about him. He's a Stephen Hawking level concept with a Down syndrome level execution. And overall, I can't say that he's a genuinely good character. I'd put Lars and Alyssa in the okay category. Lars is introduced in 6 and he's very boring, which admittedly makes a lot of sense because he's specifically created to be the generic anime hero type character. But because he was designed specifically to be that, he is just a generic anime character. Alyssa does have a little bit more going on. Her whole story is about her being built as a weapon of war and turning away from that and finding that she can be more than what she was made to do, which can be a very good story. The problem is that after 6, they don't really lean on this at all, and her entire character after that game is just devoted to her having a crush on Lars and pretty much nothing else. So the only heroes we have to actually look at are the ones that are not the main characters of the series. And when we look over there really isn't all that much to see. The vast majority of heroes in this series have essentially one aspect of their character that just encompasses all of them. Hwoarang is Jin's rival and is obsessed with beating him. That's it. There's nothing to his character outside of that. Xiao Yu is in love with Jin and wants to help him. That's it. There's nothing else about her character. Zafina needs to kill Azazel and take out the Devil Gene. That's it. There's literally nothing else about her character. And I could basically go down the entire list like this. Most Tekken characters are very one-dimensional. There isn't a whole lot to them. And the characters whose stories do have a little more meat on its bones have absolutely garbage pacing. I mean, truly terrible. Whether you're talking about Eddie Gordo trying to find out who it is who killed his father, and then having several games in a row where they just waste their time on not doing that, instead preferring to focus on a completely different, unrelated storyline that doesn't further his character at all. Or talking about Miguel trying to get revenge on Jin for the death of his sister. That storyline happens in Tekken 6. He doesn't further it at all in Tekken 7, and he's not even in Tekken 8. Steve was introduced in 4 and was trying to find out who he was and where he came from since then. He finds out in 7. In 4, 5, and 6, he doesn't get any closer to his goal. And then after he does find out in 7, and we're expecting the story to continue past that in 8, all we end up getting with his character is a completely non-canon ending where he gets super buff as a joke. Tekken is far more interested in doing wild, goofy, off-the-wall shit than they are with respecting these characters and their stories. And pretty much their entire roster who isn't in the main story has this issue. The one and only exception to that rule is King. King is a very good character with an amazing amazing story. I would go as far as say as his story is Shakespearean. Not necessarily Shakespearean in terms of quality, but it is written in a style that is reminiscent of how Shakespeare wrote his stories. It deals with themes like redemption, friendship, loyalty, and all that other good shit that made classic stories the classics that they became. He has a genuinely good character arc, and I would say is the only character outside of the Mishimas that is a fully fledged three-dimensional character. But sadly, that's just not enough to turn the tide for Tekken in this competition. So we're at the end of the video, let's tally up the points. But first, let's see where each of these competitors currently rank. In first place, we have Street Fighter with 2 points, Tekken coming in second place with 1 point, and Mortal Kombat coming in last with 0 points. Let's see how this changes, shall we? In third place of which series has the best heroes is sadly Tekken. The truth is, and has always been, that the story of Tekken is about villains, and that shows. Which honestly leaves Tekken with the least amount of options. While you do have a couple that aren't bad, the only one that really hits the same level at the top tiers of the other two series is King. And sadly, that's just not enough to give it a higher rank here. In second place comes Mortal Kombat. While Mortal Kombat does have countless heroes with quite a bit of story, most of them can't really be considered good characters, and really just exist to push the plot forward. However, there are quite a few that you can consider decent heroes, as well as 1 or 2 that are truly fantastic, like Johnny Cage, Scorpion, and Sonya Blade, which is easily enough to put them in front of Tekken, but not quite enough to put them in front of Street Fighter, which is going to be number 1. The worst characters Street Fighter has are dull, boring, and not worth anybody's time. However, their legacy characters are done pretty well. Their stories are generally pushed forward in some way, and their characters evolve a decent amount over the course of the story. While no individual Street Fighter hero excels beyond someone like Johnny Cage, there are just so many more heroes from Street Fighter that excel beyond 95% of what Mortal Kombat has to offer. The way I would describe it is Mortal Kombat is 2 A's and 8 F's, while Street Fighter is like 6 B's and 4 F's. Overall, they're just doing better in class. So that's the new score. Street Fighter being way ahead with 4 points, while Tekken and Mortal Kombat both come in last place with 1. Notice I said last place, not second place, because we don't do that participation trophy bullshit here. Oh god, that's it. I'm finally done. This was so difficult. There were so many heroes to go through. Okay, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for part 3 where we're going to be covering the villains. And if you did enjoy, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that little bell icon because you won't be notified if you don't hit the bell icon. And y'all be safe out there, you hear?